Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Audio Judo. I'm Kyle,
And I'm Matthew.
and this, of course, is Audio Judo, your podcast of music discovery. If you're a fan of Audio Judo, you might enjoy one of our other podcasts as well. Throughline, where host Christian investigates the common thread running through an album, is in its second season right now. And Audio Judo does jazz, where host Chris talks about the history and stories behind some of your favorite jazz albums and musicians. We'll probably be back after tax season this year. All three of the Audio Judo podcasts are proud members of the Pantheon Podcast Network. If you're a music fan, there's something for you on Pantheon with over 100 podcasts in the network to choose from. They are also now starting to branch out into sports and movies and all kinds of other things, so there's definitely something there for you if you're interested. So go check them out at pantheonpodcasts.com.
Did you try to read that like an NPR thing? I felt like you did. You held back a little
Did
bit.
I, Matthew, did I?
Yeah.
Was I calm and collected?
It was a little too
keeping
soft.
keeping my voice level and even at the
Now,
keel of this
stay
boat
tuned
that
for
we
clips
call
from Fresh
Audio
Air.
Judo.
Which version?
The Fresh Prince of Bel Air?
Fresh Prince of Bel Air.
Oh, fresh air.
Fresh Air.
Fresh air.
So as we finally put 2024 to rest, get back to regular episodes, Kyle, what do you have for us today?
Matthew,
Yeah.
we'll come back to why I picked this one, but what I picked was The Firm by The Firm. And of
This
course,
was a-
as you know,
go
The
ahead.
Firm, of course, is a British novelty band. They wrote such comedic gold hits as Arthur Daly, Ease All Right, Superheroes, Star Trekkin'. Actually,
Oh,
I
shit.
screwed that up. I'm sorry.
I think I did the wrong one.
That is another band called The Firm that was actually active at exactly the same time that the firm that we're going to talk about they were a novelty British comedy band. Their most famous song is Star Trekkin'. It's a horrible song.
I will say for a split second,
Mhm.
you scared the shit out of me there. My palms actually immediately started sweating. Like, oh no. Did I? Oh crap.
Was he serious? Oh shit.
Oh. So yeah. Well,
Yay.
this was a surprise choice, I must say,
Mm.
when you put it on the calendar many months ago.
Mhm.
So we had to finagle it into the schedule. We had some other elements pop up, made us kind of shift the timeline around, but it was always kind of looming there, and I'm not really sure how I felt about it.
Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about it first, and then I'm
Okay.
gonna come back to why I picked this and
Okay,
why.
okay.
Yeah. So, Matthew, I want you to do me a little favor here.
Sure.
Just close your eyes. Close
Okay.
your eyes. Tip your head back a little bit. Relax. Deep breath in. All right. Now, picture you transport yourself back. It is the early 1980s for you.
Okay.
You are a world famous British musician.
Okay.
You're on top of the world. You have tons of money, anything you could possibly want.
Couldn't be happy.
However, your band has just broken up.
Yes.
Maybe it was because of some infighting, or maybe it was because of drugs, or maybe dealing with legal things and songwriting credits.
Sure.
Or maybe it was because you were arguing over who ate the last biscuit from the craft services trolley during a recording session. We
Okay.
know it was you, Glenn. Own up to it, you motherfucker. Deep breath again, in and out. Okay, calm and relax. So.
Okay.
You, Matthew, are currently richer than God. You can retire happy. You can spend the rest of your life doing nothing but taking bubble baths and
Ooh.
doing drugs and
Soothing.
just relaxing. Yeah, very soothing. And so, of course, what are you going to choose to do?
Nothing. Oh wait.
Wrong. You're going to form a supergroup, motherfucker. You are going to get together with some of your friends and you are going to form a supergroup because obviously that's the best thing to do in that situation, right?
Yes. No.
Perfect.
No. So,
no.
yes,
Okay.
on the one hand, it was one of the first rock supergroups of the 1980s.
Yes.
The supergroup had been around a few times in the 70s. Clapton formed a couple actually, with previously successful musicians, but this was the first one that I can recall in the 80s. So there's a lot to talk about in that regard. But on the other hand, apart from a couple of hits, the output was extremely average, or less so. Even the hit isn't that great.
Yes.
And
that's what absolutely kills me. So if you're not familiar with the Firm,
Yeah.
the Firm is made up of Paul Rodgers on vocals, formerly of the band Bad Company.
Yes.
Huge rock band. scads of music, amazing hits.
Mhm.
Also, some guy named Jimmy Page on guitar, formerly of a band called Led Zeppelin.
Not familiar.
Yeah, yeah, I heard of this other band the other day called the Beatles. Have you heard of them? We need to look into them.
I'll check it out.
Yeah,
Is it two
a guy
E's?
named one E, Beatles.
Oh, Beatles.
Beatles.
Got it.
Yes.
I'll look into it.
Chris Slade on drums, formerly of Manfred Mann's Earth Band, another band, huge hits throughout the 70s,
Yes.
right? Obviously knows what he's doing. And the guy named Tony Franklin on bass, formerly of his garage. Kind of the wild card here.
I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about him. Yeah.
He toured. He did a record with Roy Harper.
Roy Harper. Yeah.
He would also go on to become incredibly talented and famous. And he was already talented, but he would go on to become famous, play with a lot of other bands.
Yeah, he's
after
a session guy.
Firm.
Yeah.
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 But at this point, kind of an unknown,
Yeah.
but also a really talented musician.
It's not very often you get to take pot shots at a living guitar legend, though.
Right.
Which is what I'm about to do.
I knew this was going to happen. But yeah, so Jimmy Page and Paul Rodgers had sort of been friends. They were both of their bands had been covered by Swan Song Records, Led Zeppelin's record label. And after their bands sort of ceased to exist, they spent a lot of time with each other hanging out, and one would go out on tour with somebody else or be performing solo or whatever, and the other would go see them and yada, yada, yada. So Paul Rodgers recalls speaking about Jimmy Page, quote, "He'd come around and check out my home studio frequently, and we ended up writing songs, but without any definite plans. Jimmy was very keen to get on the road, so he put a band together. The first thing I knew was that he had to be writing songs again. I'd already seen one of my friends going down that road in Koss, and it wasn't going to happen again."
Right.
So there he's talking about Paul Kossoff, the guitarist and co-founder of the band Free, of which Paul Rodgers was a member. After the breakup of the band Free, Paul Kossoff went down the road of drug addiction. He really lost himself, and eventually on a flight from the UK to the US in 1976, he actually died from a pulmonary embolism when a blood clot from his leg moved into his lung. Really sad story. He was, I think, like 32 at the time or something like that. I didn't write the number down, but still very young, very talented musician. More importantly here, though, what Paul Rodgers was talking about is getting Jimmy Page back out of this rut that he'd gotten in. He just, he's one of those people that he needs to be working. He needs to be writing music. He needs to be producing. He needs to be making things. Otherwise, he's just going to stagnate, and that's going to be the rest of his life, is just this stagnant thing.
And the reason why that he was not writing is because in 1980, his very good friend and drummer, John Bonham from Led Zeppelin, died of an alcohol overdose, and the band was essentially over. And because of that, he had been using for years before that. He slipped further and further into this addiction because of that grief. So he was aimless, directionless at that point. He did a couple of things with. He did a soundtrack for the Death Wish 2 movie.
Yeah. What?
Which is terrible.
It's not great.
He did a couple of one-offs with some charity concerts. The Arms concert. He also did. He showed up at here and there. He was here and there. He wasn't doing really much anything specifically.
He was listless and bored, and he just didn't know what the hell to do with himself. And so Paul Rodgers saw this as an opportunity initially to just get him doing something so he didn't fall off the cliff and die, basically. Yeah. So they originally wanted to form a band with Bill Buford and Pino Palladino from other famous bands, but they were under contracts at the time. So they eventually recruited Tony Franklin and Chris Slade. Interestingly enough, none of them were interested in playing music from their former bands.
Yes.
So this meant they had to create all new material, write all new songs. And the good news was that was actually pretty easy for them because Jimmy Page owned a studio. He owned a studio called The Soul Studio in Cookham, Berkshire, England. So basically they spent all of 1984 going in and out of the studio, just basically whenever the hell they felt like it, writing and recording and trying things out and figuring things out. It was a pretty slow process, but it worked for them because it meant that they could go in, try something out and be like, let's try it again next week. And then they'd go away and they'd use the studio for other stuff. And then they would come back and try again.
Yeah. And the results.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So this album, their debut album.
Mhm.
You know, they only released two, so there was this album and Mean Business.
Yes.
Uh, this was released in '85. It got to number 17 on the Billboard chart. Eventually went
Hmm.
gold, but it's middling, right?
It
It's
is.
very average, and it's said to have saved Jimmy's career, if for no other reason than to get him moving to do something
Yes.
else. Uh, it it's such a weird album. It's such a weird place in time.
It is. And
1985.
yeah.
What was
And
popular in 1985?
yeah,
Madonna.
yeah.
Yeah.
Think of all the hair metal, think of all the pop music, and this sound nobody was making something like this at the time for a reason.
Yeah.
And I guess this is as good a time as any to bring up why I picked this album. So
Okay.
I'll be really honest with you, not at all familiar with them going into this. I
Okay.
knew the hit Radioactive.
Right.
I'd heard of them before, but what I was really, really hoping for with this album was, I'm like, we're talking about rock legends here. There have to be stories. There has to be a ton of material about this album. There has to be something. There has to be stuff like, oh, well, we recorded this one night after we'd been out partying, and Jimmy said something, and then I started to riff on that, and we just walked into the studio and started recording. And like, I was like, so maybe it's a little bit of a middling album, but there's going to be great stories we can mine for this. Wrong. There's nothing. It is the most boring, like, oh, Jimmy came over one afternoon and said, let's go record this. And I said, all right. And then the next day we went to the recording studio and we recorded for a few hours.
Right.
And then we got a little bored, so we went and got some gin and tonics and went out on the patio for a while. And
That's
then
essentially
what
it is.
And like,
it's four British white guys hanging out making a record.
This is the version
four
of
rich British white guys.
Yeah, oh, incredibly rich white guys. This is the version of podcasting in 1985. Boring white guys. No offense to us.
Yeah, well,
get some equipment and just start, tootling along.
I have an idea. Let's write a song.
You know what we could do. So when I picked it, I was really hoping, I was like, all right, I got plenty of time until we're going to get to this one. I've got a couple months. If worst comes to worst and I don't like this, I'll say, hey, you know what? Let's dump that one and go with something else. We got busy, shit happened, and then it's like, okay, great. We're going to bump that one down the road. So I hadn't even begun to research it. And then we roll around to it, and I'm like, and we bumped it down the road again. I'm like, well, okay, I haven't even started to research that one, but it's going to be good. There's got to be some stories. There's going to be some fun stuff.
It's going to be good.
And then we bumped it down the road again, and I finally sat down to do my research, and I'm like, oh, fuck, there's nothing here. And by that point, I'm pretty sure you were done. You were like, I've done my notes. I was way complete. Done. And I'm like, I'm not just going to scrap it. So I did my best and came up with some things.
So done. Because there's nothing.
Yeah.
Because it was easy to do because there's nothing. So think about what you have here. You have Paul Rogers, right? You've already kind of gone over his CV, Bad Company, Free. So he's written songs like Feel Like Making Love, Can't Get Enough, Shooting Star, and Bad Company, these huge mega rock and roll songs. You got Chris Slade, the bald-headed drummer from Manfred Mann's Earth Band, and Uriah Heep. Also, he after this, became a mainstay with AC/DC for years and years and years. Tony Franklin, that guy. And then you got Jimmy Page, right? You got this the legend who played with Clapton and Jeff Beck and the Yardbirds. He did session work. He played on I Can't Explain by The Who. He's played on Stone songs. He even played on some Beatles songs. This band you're trying to tell me about. Shirley Bassey. He played on Petula Clark. He played with Van Morrison. He said something like 2,000 or 3,000 sessions.
Yeah.
In that
insane
time before he started playing with the Yardbirds, right? So he's got all this and then he goes on to play to form Led Zeppelin, to have the most magical, legendary career of all time. And then you get in a funk. You get in a funk, right? And Bonham dies at his home, at Page's home, right? So there's that. and
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin's over, and he refused to touch his guitar for
Hmm.
years. Just grieved
Yeah.
about it. Right? It's it's terribly sad because okay, so he's got this gorgeous studio, like you said. He's got Soul Studios. It's a beautiful facility, and he had free reign, and the results suck.
Yeah.
The sales were
I mean,
okay, but reviews were
we're
devastatingly
shit. Yeah.
horrible. Rolling Stone, which is never a magazine I give a lot of credence to in the first place, seems to get this pretty well. They say the real disappointment here is Jimmy Page. Could these sloppy, sluggish riffs come from the same genius who created Led Zeppelin's ferocious bite? Is it possible that the engineers who worked on Zeppelin's records really deserved far more credit for the sound than they received? If Jimmy Page's name weren't listed here, and if his face didn't appear on the album sleeve, one might think that his involvement was just a rumor, if not a joke. The riffs, tone, and timing sound like someone doing a barely passable Page imitation, hardly like the monster chord master himself. That was a 2-star rating, and there were plenty of 1 stars. So,
Yeah.
and the most noted misstep on the record, a
Mm.
cover of "You've Got That Lovin'
Oh
Feeling"
God.
by the Righteous
When
Brothers.
when we get to that, I did not realize that was on this until the first time I listened to it, and
Ooh,
I was like, did I accidentally? What is this? And it's in the
oh.
middle. Oh God, we'll get to it. We'll get
It,
to it.
it,
But
it does not seem like the Jimmy Page of my youth,
no, no.
not by a long shot. Here we are,
Yeah,
though.
it's terrible, and it just the, what this actually reminds me of is a better than average high school band. Like some kids put together a garage band. Like even the lyrics, like you look at them and they are very amateurishly written. They're very like,
Ooh,
ooh, I'm
we're going to
angsty
talk
and in
about
love and I'm
that.
a teenager, and I'm sure we will.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm so like I feel shitty that I'm inflicting this on people right now, to be totally honest with you.
Oh, but I
Like,
promise you, there will be people that respond to us and say, I
oh yeah,
love this record. I love
it,
it.
it has a very small but very loyal fan base, I've discovered from some of my research, and they really are like there are people who rip this album, especially a lot of like Zeppelin fans. They rip this album. They're like, this is shit. But there are also a small contingent of people who love this album. They're like, this is what Jimmy Page was supposed to sound like. This was what he was meant to do. And
How
Zeppelin
does
was
that
just
make
the
sense?
stepping stone to get here. Like,
How can anyone justify that this is what Jimmy Page was supposed to sound like ever?
I don't know. I don't know.
You want to talk?
I do
Go
think
ahead.
that, we oftentimes talk about, right place, right time, where it's like, oh, hey, this is a mediocre album, but I found it, when I first fell in love, or, I listened to this on my way to school for my first day of high school, or, this, released on the day that I proposed to my partner or whatever. I do wonder if this just 1985 was just that time where a lot of people, this album just happened to be like when they were in those teenage years or in their early 20s, and something happened and they just like, oh, that's my thing.
I was just about a
I don't
teenager.
know. Yeah.
Ugh, ugh. So we'll talk
And
about the album artwork, and then I'll tell you
let's.
what my first opinions were.
So I at first really liked this album artwork. Um, it's this really like very linear, striking design. It uses the lettering of the firm to form this sort of right angle of like a cube or like a building. It's a really interesting 2-point perspective where they use the top corners.
Yeah,
If I can do this in frame here. Wait,
yeah,
where's my hand?
I see it. Yeah, yeah.
There we go. The corners as the perspective points instead of like a level horizon, and it kind of fades off. It's pretty cool. Then it was designed by Steve Marr,
Yeah.
who, as far as I can tell, continues to do some cover designs from time to time. He's a little bit of an ongoing artist. He's still around, I believe. His last credited work was 2020.
Really?
So he's
So I
still
couldn't
around.
find
Seems to be
anything for him at all.
that was that was from Discogs.
Yeah, that's where I
Um,
looked. That's so weird. I found that he was a musician for an
oh,
Irish band. Was that a
one thing
different
I did
Steve
have to do
Marr?
is
Yeah.
it could be, but I had to go to the Brazilian cover. And then if you
Oh.
look at that, it says Steve Martin. You can click on it, and it shows like he's done some others. There is another artist named Steve Marr, who is an Irish
Oh,
musician,
so I had the wrong one.
and I believe so because I found that guy too. But and again, it
Fair.
may be the same person, but that guy looks like he's 30 at best, and I'm like, there's no way even if he's 50. That would mean when he was designing this album, he was 15.
10.
So 10, 15 years old. So, like, I don't think that that's the case.
Okay. Well, so while this album is not that great, this album cover is one of my favorites, though.
But
I do
it's
love
very
the cover.
iconic.
It's simple, it's bold, it's effective.
The only thing that I don't like about it is
Yeah.
the more I look at it, the more and more I go back into that same thing of if this is like a high school garage band, this is absolutely a cover that somebody could have drawn like
on the
on a
napkin.
notebook. Like,
Yeah,
and
or
it's
the
like,
back of someone's notebook. Like, this is our
Yeah.
band, bro.
yeah,
This is our band. So look, I drew it, and it's on every one of that kid's notebooks.
exactly.
He draws it everywhere.
There's
He
the
draws
there's
it
the
in
cool
Sharpie
there's
on
the
someone's
cool S.
jean jacket.
Yeah, exactly. There's the cool S, and then there's the firm or logo, bro.
Right, exactly. That's exactly
And
what that feels like to me.
it does feel
But I
to me
like
though
it.
like it is very good design because it
Maybe
is
I'm just
laid
12.
out very nicely, and it is something that's very, it's complex enough that it's something that you can't just immediately recreate, but it's simple enough that it sticks with you. So I do like the cover. It's just not the best.
Yeah, I think it's cool. But again, maybe I'm just 12. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool. Is that your band, bro? That's cool. That's-
You the firm? You guys are in the firm? You guys, what do you do in the firm?
So
Bass. Oh, cool.
I play
All right,
bass.
bro.
Oh, you play bass. Sorry.
One other interesting note I got to say about the cover. Crediting on here, they credited Stuart Epps on engineering, Gordon Vickery on mastering, and Steve Privet on tape operation and supplier of tea, gin, and tonics.
Yes.
Which is cool.
Stuart Epps, and this. So I always try to be topical. Trying to be topical.
Mhm.
I always try to wear a shirt that has some sort of reference to whatever we're talking about. If we're talking about Rush,
Sure.
we're talking about when we talked to Maya, I had a Envy of None shirt on. Okay, so
Yeah.
I have a Marillion shirt on
Oh.
because Stuart Epps was a producer for one of their records.
Oh,
in the
very cool.
Late '80s. So I was trying to be relevant.
That's nice. I like that.
So in 1985, when this came out, I was still am, but was a really big Led Zeppelin fan, and was pretty sad that I was never going to get to see them live. They were scheduled to perform in Detroit on their next tour before Bonham passed, so maybe I would have been able to see them. Who knows? I was all of 8 in 1980. So when I heard that Jimmy Page had a new band, I was kind of naturally intrigued. I had liked Robert Plant's work with the Honey Drippers in 1984, a project that Page also had been a part of. So I thought, this is going to be fun. I liked Paul Rodgers enough, has an amazing voice. I was never a huge Bad Company fan, but I thought this had a lot of potential. And when Radioactive was released, I thought they were kind of onto something at that point. And then I got the record home. Yeah. Disappointed was the understatement of that particular year, 1985. Horns? Righteous Brothers? It was very confusing to me. The muscle was not there. Zepp's muscle. Even, okay, it's not Zeppelin. I know it's not Zeppelin, but Jimmy Page. It's Jimmy Page's muscle. It's his
Yeah.
Gibson. Yeah, it's got to have some balls. And it didn't. It was so blah. But in all honesty, it's been a long time since I listened to the whole album. Let's say, I don't know, 38 years. So this will be interesting because maybe there's still something there. I don't know. Maybe my opinion's changed, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I doubt it too.
Yeah, I don't hold out hope.
Should we take a quick break and we'll come back and do a track by track?
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you
Today's show is brought to you by Atomic Podcast Services. Are you tired of spending hours hunched over your computer struggling to edit your podcast episodes? Do you want more time to create instead of editing? Well, we have the solution for you. Introducing Atomic Podcast Services, a premium podcast editing service that will take your show to the next level.
With Atomic Podcast Services, you can say goodbye to tedious editing tasks and hello to a polished, professional-sounding podcast. They will expertly enhance your audio quality, seamlessly remove background noise, and ensure every episode sounds crystal clear. But that's not all. As part of their premium service, they will also help you with ID3 tagging, scheduling, and posting of episodes, and for a little extra, even create engaging audiograms to promote your episodes on social media platforms. There's even a discount if you subscribe to their monthly services. With Atomic Podcast Services, you'll have more time to focus on what you do best, creating incredible content.
So why waste another minute struggling with complex editing software? Let Atomic Podcast Services take care of the technical side while you focus on captivating your audience. Visit their website at atomicpods, that's pods with a Z.com, to learn more and book your editing session today. Hello, this is Matthew from Audio Judo. Are you looking for additional Audio Judo content? Stuff that will make you laugh with an emphasis on music? Then you need to subscribe to our Patreon page, and this is how you do it. First thing, head to our site, patreon.com/audiojudo. Our Patreon site is the only place you're going to find all the extras that we work so hard to provide. There are Judo Chops, which are mini episodes. There are bits that are taken out of episodes for whatever reasons, some bloopers, some full interviews with artists like Steve Hackett from Genesis. We have 3 tiers currently. There is the Shout It Out Loud tier, which would only cost you $1 in the US. For that amount, you get a shout out by name at the end of each episode. For $5 a month, little step up, the front row tier, you get a shout out on each episode, early access to full episodes, and access to all the bonus content. With a more significant investment, $20 a month, the backstage pass tier, you get everything that is available at the other tiers, a special personalized gift from Kyle and I. Most importantly, after paying for 1 year, you get to host an episode of Audio Judo with me and Kyle on the album of your choosing. We have completed several of these. They're a ton of fun. You can find the link to our Patreon account on our website, audiojudo.com. But if you can't find it there, it is patreon.com/audiojudo. Thanks for subscribing. And now back to the program.
And we're back,
So awkward.
right?
What's the first song?
It's
Uh-oh.
Let Me Cough.
Coffee?
Excuse me.
You need a cough button?
Closer?
Yeah, so man, it's like all those feelings of a disappointed 12-year-old rock and roll fan came flooding back me the second the song starts. First of all, let's tackle the obvious. The horns.
Yes.
As you know, I am rarely a fan of horns and rock music, and it is no different here. The players are great, don't get me wrong. Steve Dawson on trumpet, Paul Weimar on baritone sax, Willie Garnett on tenor sax, Don Weller on tenor sax solo, although it does tend to weaken the song. Oh, and by the way, you have one of the masters of the electric guitar on this song being overshadowed and replaced with a saxophone solo.
Yeah.
No, thank you, sir.
Yeah, well, that I don't get either.
There's a guitar solo though on this song, but it's weird, disconnected. It's so strange.
Doesn't feel like it belongs here. And then on top of that, they do this thing through this whole album where they're feeding the guitar through these effects pedals that absolutely dates it. It's like,
so
that's 1985. That's what a guitar sounds like in 1985. It's either that or like that hair metal noise. Like this is what it sounds like. Flames are getting higher.
So apparently this song had been in the works for a while. Before this, it made its very first appearance, melody-wise, as a song called Fire on the demos for Led Zeppelin's last studio album, In Through the Outdoor. I wonder what Robert Plant would have sounded like on this song. Without the horns, of course.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk for a second about the lyrics. Let's talk about it.
All right.
My God.
All right, let's go for it.
When you hold me tight, I feel my body slipping under. Lightning strikes, hits me, and I feel the thunder. I get a burning feeling. Flames are getting higher and higher. Paul Rogers, that is not love, my friend. That is the clap. No.
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 Yeah. The lyrics here are just so, like, in all honesty, I think out of everything here, the lyrics are the thing that I found the most disappointing. Because there's more talent here. You look at there's talent here that can write a song, and they just didn't do it. Like, come on.
Well, I mean, Paul Rogers, feel like making love. He's not a wordsmith.
All right, sure.
But it's a lot like Foreigner. That's one that we're going to pick. I'm going to pick a Foreigner record just so I can absolutely destroy the lyrics. It is so bad. It's so bad. Musically, I love Foreigner, but it's terrible. And then, just before we end it for this song, there's the ending of the song itself. So after we get out of this weird guitar solo, the vocals come back at the end like it was an accident. Like they come back for this one last line, and then it abruptly ends. And this whole song is less than 3 minutes long. Like it was never finished. Like they never gave it everything. They're like, 2:45, good enough.
Yeah, we're done. There's another thing they do throughout this that really bothers me, where whenever Jimmy Page does get a guitar solo, they like crop it. Like the end is always so abrupt, and it's right back into lyrics. It's like they don't give it any chance to settle. It's just like he's like noodling along. He's like boom, and then immediately lyrics like blah, 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 like.
Right. Hold that up to the guitar solo from Stairway to Heaven, which is one of the most wonderful guitar solos of all time. You gave him space to breathe. You let it reach a natural evolution and then come back down. And this, you give him 6.5 bars before you're like, you know what? That's it. No more.
Yeah, and you're done.
You know what? We need more trumpet. I need more trumpet on this track.
Well, it turns out we
fucking do
actually
that
only
to
have 28 seconds of tape left. So your guitar solo has to be 28 seconds, and wherever it ends, it fucking ends, and we're just gonna go into some lyrics. Oh, okay, yeah, great. Let's try that.
I'm Jimmy F.
Is that what happened? I don't know.
I'm Jimmy F. and Page. If I want more tape, go buy all the tape.
No, we're just gonna use this tape. Over
No,
and
we're
over
just gonna
again
use the
in
tape.
studio.
I've got a box here. This will be fine. We'll just use this.
It'll be fine.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Make or break?
Oh boy. Cool.
Definitely break.
Break. Couple things here.
Uh,
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I would say it's another like super generic love song. It's this is almost an extension of that first song. But
Oh.
it's there's another Jimmy solo here, but it's the same guitar effect and it does the same thing where it cuts it off real quick. It sounds like this.
Oh. So, okay. So I don't hate this one as much as I didn't care for the last one. So, a couple things.
Okay.
Pretty clear that Paul Rogers wrote the lyrics to the first two songs because he's credited as the sole writer on this song. He likes to write about relationships or something being wrong with her. Something's always
Sure.
wrong with her. He's got to make, she's got to make up her mind and all that. He was obviously the lyricist for Bad Company because they're very reminiscent of those songs. Second, Page is really dabbling in these weird tunings and sounds. He's very much trying to distance himself from the sound of Led Zeppelin. And maybe that's the point. Maybe it's just an excuse to jam again and not worry about that machine of Led Zeppelin and recreating what he had with that band because that is impossible.
Yeah.
It's strange. It's not horrible. But the thing that gets to me is that it feels rhythmically challenged in several different ways. So there are a few times, like I said, kind of over the top while we were listening to the track, the drums seem to kind of fall over each other, and the vocal rhythm, what seems like it wants to be casual and loose, ends up more like they didn't care all that much, like there was no attention to detail at all. It's just haphazardly thrown together. The guitar work is way better on this song than the first. There's just so much bending that it sounds a little like slightly out of tune.
Yeah.
And then the end of the song, there it is again. Is it the end of the song or the beginning of the next song? Like I know what they're trying to do. Like we're close to CD time when you can run tracks together. Are they just trying to run them together so you don't know where one begins and one ends? Or
maybe
is it just
like
laziness?
This one definitely does bleed into the next song, which is called Someone to Love. A third love song in a row.
Hey, would it be possible to get a little fretless bass on this album? A
You
little?
know what? Maybe we could do that.
No way. How about all of it? And we're going to jam onto one song and have it pushed way up in the front of the mix. We're going to put all this fretless bass all the way at the front of the mix.
Yeah.
So all you hear is boom, 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 boom throughout the whole
And
damn thing.
It is at least a different sound from the first two songs, but I agree that bass is just, it's right in your face, and it's weird. It's a weird sound, and I don't like it. It sounds like this.
Tony Franklin is the bass
Yeah,
player.
just
So, and then we're going to drown Paul Rogers' voice in so much reverb. And then we're going to start Chris Slade's drum part on beat 2.5 at the beginning of the song. So the rhythm is indecipherable for the first 10 seconds. And then, Paul, what we want you to do, we really don't want you to spend any time on actual lyrics. Just keep singing what you normally sing about randomly. Words like she and baby and love and lover. Just do that shit. It sounds great. Don't even write it down. Please don't write it down.
yeah. Don't
Just
even
kinda
bother.
do.
Don't even bother.
Christ, this is a jam.
Yeah.
Turned silly. Turned bad.
And then they were like, "Hey, we recorded that. Let's put it on the album."
Right. The only thing saving it is a nice solo by Page because his rhythm part is also just not very good. But you have to sift through this drenched bass line to get any of the guitar in the first place. And it's 5 minutes. It's just a meandering mess. I read a bunch of user reviews for this song saying, quote, how awesome it was. And I literally out loud said, fuck, come on. You did not like this song. You liked that. You liked it because it was Jimmy, and we all love Jimmy. But let's call out a pedestrian effort when you hear it. Because come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Off the top of my head, and I don't even remember 1985 that well. Off the top of my head, I could probably name 250 songs from 1985 that I like better than this.
Wow.
I mean, it's just.
That's. I feel like that needs to be the stinger at the end of this episode. Is just it fades out, the credits play, and then it's just Matthew listing 250 songs from 1985.
This would be longer than the episode.
Right? It would be longer than the episode.
That's better than last episode's stinger. Just throw some ass.
Yeah, throw some ass.
It's I don't care that I don't like it.
Together?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know,
another change, the acoustic guitar here, which I think is a nice change. That's nice.
I had such high hopes for this song when it started. I distinctly remember hearing this 40 years ago, and I was like, yay! Oh. And again, please see above for meandering mess. It's like he had no vocal melody at all when they set out to record this song. And he has such an amazing instrument of a voice. It's so wonderful. It's one of the most legendary rock and roll voices of all time. And he's searching for a place to land it, and he just doesn't. And please, everyone, please hear me out. Jimmy Page is one of my musical heroes. I'm not bashing this album because I want to, and I have a bone to pick with him. I'm looking at you, Liam Gallagher. I love Jimmy, but this feels and has always felt like a weak effort to me. And then there's this. Then there's, now that I'm a man, I understand. A woman needs a man to share this life together. Living in dreams, making them real, know how it feels when they say, I'm sorry, Paul, a woman needs a man? Paul?
Yes, Matthew. A
I don't even
woman
wanna talk about
needs a man.
And now, you know, Jimmy is used to playing with busy bass players. John Paul Jones was as busy as they come. But he was also doubling one of the strongest rock drummers of all time, John Bonham, the most powerful rhythm sections ever. His bass lines were strong, complementary, and rhythmically really sound. They held up. They strengthened the rhythm section. This fretless shit. And there's no doubt that he's a talented player. It just seems so drastically out of place with Jimmy Page. And they don't complement the drums. They're just on an island by themselves. Free for all alone, just sitting out there going and
And it sounds like this.
Together. Yeah, you're right there. I needed a good rant, and I'm getting it right now.
Perfect. I'm glad it's having a positive then.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, this is just it's just I don't even know what to say about these at this point. They're just like I said, this is somebody's high school band is what I hear here. I mean, ugh.
You have
So
you have really good players, and you're right. It could be, I was in bands in high school that everyone was really super talented. So what happens? Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to have a
yeah,
spotlight on them, and there's no attention to the song. There's no love of the song. It's all about playing. And that's
yeah,
what this feels like. We're getting four disparate pieces that don't coalesce at any point.
yeah,
That they're just
and
bleh.
that I think immediately goes back to the whole not only the way that the band was formed, but the way that they recorded was, it wasn't a hey, let's get together and go, like so many bands that we talked about, they're like, hey, to record this next album, we're gonna go live on a farm in the middle of nowhere for 6 months and figure out some music. Or, hey, we're gonna all move into a house together and figure this out. And like these guys were just like, yeah, we're just four, rich white dudes kind of hanging out in the UK and
Right.
what if you guys?
Sipping
What if you
tea.
had your driver? What if you had your driver bring you over to my recording studio once a week and we jammed a little bit, and like
Okay, but not on
it,
Fridays because I play croquet.
yes, clearly not. I golf on Wednesdays. So, apologies to everybody in the UK. Just the entire
On Tuesdays, I do
everybody.
heroin.
And Tuesdays are my heroin days. I can't be bothered. I need to. I wake up in the morning. I get up. I take a shower. Go downstairs. Have a lovely breakfast. Shoot up some heroin.
There's no desperation on the record.
No.
It just no one's backed into a corner. You're right.
Yeah.
And that's why it feels lazy
Yeah.
because it could be.
Yeah. So, Radioactive, the
Oh, yeah.
one thing that we would call a hit from this album.
Yeah, that quote unquote
Um,
hit. Sure.
Yeah, was released as the first single. It's their biggest hit. Um, it's an okay song. I've actually heard this on the radio before. It gets some play still to this day. The opening of it always reminds me of "Wishing Well" by Terrence Trent D'Arby.
Sure does.
It just sounds exactly the same. Interestingly enough, in trying to remember his name, so first of all, Terrence Trent D'Arby now goes by the name Sananda Miatreya.
He's Muslim
That's
now, right?
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was interesting, but he has relabeled all of his old albums with that name.
Yeah, you can't find him as Terrence Trent D'Arby.
Not at all anywhere. So I thought that was very interesting. First of all, coincidentally, in trying to figure that part out, I realized that there's also a different song called "Wishing Well" by the band Free, who we mentioned earlier. So
Yes.
didn't occur to me, but interesting tie in there. But the things that I do like about this song, it does have a nice hook that kind of pulls you in, and that there's like this interesting effect whenever Paul Rogers says "radioactive." It's kind of a fun like little thing, and it sticks in your brain for a while, which I think is cool. The guitar solo on this track is certainly a thing.
It's definitely a thing.
It's a thing that happens and was recorded and put on
that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one. Yeah. And it sounds like this.
Well, I'm not uptight, not unattractive. Turn me on tonight, 'cause I'm a radioactive. Well, it's not a fight, and I'm not your captive. Turn me loose tonight, 'cause I'm a
So it got to number 2 on the Billboard Mainstream Rock Chart, number 28 on the top 100. So it's a top 40 hit.
Yeah.
Heavily reverb vocals, funky bass line, got some weird sound effects. Sounds more like they belong to Thomas Dolby than Jimmy Page.
Yes.
It's not a bad song. It's very short. Again, under 3 minutes. It's pretty okay. It just sounds thin. So the fretless bass, it does supply a little bit of punch on this song, but there's no bottom end to it. There's no heaviness. And makes the whole song just like 1985. Everything's
Yeah.
super thin. Thanks, cocaine. Everything is super thin.
Yeah.
So Radioactive inspired the bass line, the slide bass on Even Flow.
Yes.
Jeff Ament
Maybe
says
the
he was
best thing that it did.
Right. He said Jeff Ament said he was a big Tony Franklin fan, and the whole song just kind of sits a little. Or he was kind of fascinated by his work, and he said because of Tony Franklin, I knew that fretless would add a really cool voice and texture to rock music. So that harmonic that I used in Even Flow, I'm kind of ripping off the Firm's Radioactive. I'm like, I would have never known that. I would have never expected that.
I knew it was viable in rock and roll. Like from this?
From here?
Good
okay.
for you. Like, talk about finding the diamond in the turd. Jesus Christ. So if you were unlucky enough to have purchased this on vinyl, now you flip the album over. And
sorry, I had it.
Yeah. What do we open the second side of the album with? A cover song. Just a wonderful cover song called "You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling."
Right, a song written by Phil Spector, Barry Mann, and Cynthia Weil. First recorded in 1964 by the American vocal duo, the Righteous Brothers.
Yeah.
That version,
and
that version,
fantastic example. Fantastic example of early Phil Spector wall of sound kind of feeling. Really good. Everybody knows that version.
Right, it reached number 1.
Yeah, it did. This version, I don't like it.
Didn't.
It's bad. It could be removed from this album, and nothing of value would be lost.
Again, the fretless bass out of place. And the pace of the song, like a lot of the album, seems dragging. For a ballad, it's dragging. It's behind the beat, like we're being lulled to sleep. The background vocals.
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, it's slow. The background vocals, this is the only highlight that I found. Background vocals are provided by Samantha Brown, Helen Chappell, and Joy Yates. And this is the weird thing, that I alone may have picked out of this.
Ooh.
So there was a sitcom in the 1990s called Wings that was about two pilot brothers that owned an airline in Nantucket. Their best friend owned the diner at the airport, and her name was Helen Chappell. When I looked up a picture of the Helen Chappell background singer for this song, it was the spitting image of that character. So,
what?
So clearly, whoever created the show and the character knew about her and honored her in this very small way. And I think that's pretty cool.
What?
I know, it was twisted.
That is such a weird. What?
Yeah, I'm like looking through.
Oh my God!
I'm looking through all, and I always like look up what they, who they were. Do I recognize them from anywhere? All the background singers. I'm like, if I could find a picture of them, and I looked this up, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm looking at the actual Helen Chappell from the show, and I'm like, no, that's spelled differently. I clicked on her thing, and it's
Wow,
someone did that.
That's crazy. I wonder if there was like a personal relation there, or if
maybe there was.
Very interesting.
Right, that was the highlight of the whole album for me.
Yeah, this is what this song with that stupid whammy guitar sounds like.
If you would only love me like you used to do, we had a love you don't find every day.
Yeah. Sorry, that clip was kind of short, Matthew, because I don't want to inflict that on people. But this song, like, the best thing I can say about it is this reminds me of something that would be in Twin Peaks. Like David Lynch, there would be a scene where they were like, oh, it's a high school dance or something, and there's, wacky shenanigans going on, and somebody's being murdered or whatever. And this would be the song that the band was playing in the background while some David Lynch characters were trying to dance, but they were like accidentally solving clues to a murder or some shit. Like, and then what's his name? David Lynch's character would come in with his big ass hearing aid and be like, "The problem is the pancakes aren't very good." And you'd be like,
he's got he's got his nitrous that.
Yeah. Anyways, like I said, this track out of an album that I'm not a big fan of, this is the worst track, and it could have been left off of here, and the world would have been a better place without it.
Agreed. It's not good.
Yeah. Money Can't Buy.
Okay, as far as songs go, especially ones on this album, this is the one that I appreciate the most.
Oh, okay.
The bass still annoys the shit out of me because it's too busy. I know he's trying to fill up some space, but it isn't always necessary to fill up all of the space. Just lay back, my dude. But I like this song a lot. Melodically, it's a little different. It has some early Dokken in it, which would have been out at the right time. Would have been right first. I think Breaking the Chains was like 83, and Under Lock and Key was 84. So yeah, we're right around early Dokken. And the solo is really nice, actually. It's a little out there, but not unrecognizably so as a guitar solo. Some of the slight key changes that he uses, they're very nice. It's dated, right? It's dated. The song is dated. The whole album is. It sounds like the 80s. We talked about this before. Hyper clean electric guitars, fretless bass, too much reverb, overproduced drums. There are some albums where that sound is okay, like Brothers in Arms. We talked about Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits. That worked. But this didn't.
Yeah.
And the engineer, like you mentioned, the engineer on this record was Stuart Epps. He produced, Jimmy for a long, long time, and Elton John and Bill Wyman and all these other guys. And a lot of his stuff is heavy and thick in the old days. But it's just kind of another line of producers to fall victim to kind of that 80s thinness.
Yeah. And that's the thing that absolutely kills me, too, is he's a more than capable engineer. He could have made this sound however he wanted, and somebody chose this. It's just, it sounds like this.
Money can't buy the love.
It could have if you doubled that rhythm guitar and made it just a little bit thicker, I think that song would have been really strong.
I think my biggest problem with this song is because it comes after You've Lost That Loving Feeling.
You've already lost it. You're gone.
I'm so mad when I get to this song. I just can't give it a good listen.
I get it.
God damn it. And then this song plays and I'm like, I have to calm down through it.
Album pacing, so important. Money Can't Buy, Satisfaction Guaranteed, and even Radioactive would have worked much better if they would have put all three of those songs at the beginning of the record.
Oh, absolutely.
And switched the whole thing around, because it would have started off so strong, and then get weaker, and by the end of the record, you're like, oh, I don't care anymore. It's over.
Yeah.
But instead, you're like, oh, I can't get to the rest of it because I got thrown off my rhythm by that POS one song before, and now I can't listen to it.
Yeah. You mentioned Satisfaction Guaranteed. That's the next track.
Yeah.
I do want to mention at this point, every song title on this album up to this point has been a double entendre. Including Radioactive. Just putting that out there. Yeah. This does have an okay guitar solo from Jimmy Page in here. It's very short, and they do the same thing where they cut it off again, but it's almost ending your album with the song Satisfaction Guaranteed.
Not so much, right? So this was the third single from the album. Did absolutely nothing, but the beginning of it sounds a lot like a Bad Company song.
Yes,
The
it
chorus
does.
is pretty cool. This is actually one of my favorite songs on the record, and that's why I said if you had flipped it, I may have been interested. Uh, I think that I like this one because it's because of the blues influence on this too,
Hmm.
which is old Jimmy. This is Jimmy within a structured blues chord arrangement and soloing with and without a slide and much better lyrics. And I don't know if there was help on this one or what, but head upon the highway just as fast as I could go. I rode through the night and halfway through the day. I had no direction. I didn't even want to know where I was going. The only thing I knew was that I had to get away. Okay, that's not horrible.
Hmm.
It's not horrible. That's you know, he's traveling. Fine, that's good. I don't mind that. It's much better. The one thing that bothers me on this song though is how stiff the drums sound. There's no fluidity to his parts. Listen, man, I don't need you to be busy and sound like Bonham or Peart, but I need you to be in a groove. You know, even Charlie Watts from the Stones, who played the easiest drum parts in history, was groovy and in the pocket. You didn't notice him, but you knew he was there. And that is like the biggest compliment you could give to a drummer is that I didn't notice you, but I knew you were there, which means everything was rock solid. And I notice Chris Slade, and I don't want to because it stands out so bad. The word is plodding. The word here is plodding.
Plodding.
But I still dig the song.
Yeah, it sounds like this.
Now then tell me, baby, do you need my love? Tell me, baby, are you thinking of me? Tell me, baby, what it is you need. What kind of satisfaction guarantee? Tell me, baby. Tell me, baby. Tell me, baby, do you need my love?
Ugh.
I don't hate that one.
Okay. Wrapping it up. Midnight Moonlight. This
It's a
to me
doozy.
is actually a pretty good song. This is out of every song on here. This is my favorite, and I think a lot of that is probably because it's a holdover Zeppelin song. It's also very long. It's 9 minutes and 13 seconds.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of place for the musicians to kind of play around. They saved some of their better material for this one, I think.
100%.
Like I said, originally written by Jimmy Page for Led Zeppelin, and Paul Rogers tells this interesting story of how he got on this album. He says, quote, one day Jimmy, brought around a cassette and said, would you like to write some lyrics to this? It was 19 minutes long. It was absolutely fantastic. I said, I don't know that I can we shorten it? So we got it down to 9 minutes, and he was happy with the results. I said to him, it's funny, the chorus seems to have an extra bar in it. And he goes, well, it does. It's in 9/4. That's the kind of thing he threw in with Led Zeppelin.
He threw in with who? Led Zeppelin.
Led Zeppelin.
Right. This isn't them. This is completely different. Right? He was trying to recreate something here without any doubt. There's acoustic elements, there's electric elements, like a lot of Zepp era epics had, but it's not right. The bass is so active, so distracting. And while Paul Rogers' voice is very nice, it is very nice, it lacks the emotion and the sensitivity that Robert Plant could bring to a song and then turn it on its head and bring this raw power. I'm thinking of like the Immigrant Song, and Stairway, and Cashmere, where he's able to ride the line between these sensitive emotional lyrics and these really powerful lyrics. I want to like this song, but it just isn't right.
I think that's a good point. It sounds like it's about to be something and then it never gets there.
Right.
Like, that is what this whole song does for me, is it's like it's right there. You just need to figure something else out and make it work, and they never quite do it. Judge the result, though. It sounds like this.
Midnight, moonlight lady, bird on the wing, she is flying to greet. Bird on the wing, she is flying to me.
It's it's different. It's just completely different than what I expected. Uh,
Yeah.
but on the upside, this was the album that let Jimmy Page know that it was all going to be okay for him. He could write
Hmm.
songs again, and they were all right. He just needed some practice and to get his chops working again. Um, he released another album with The Firm, and then he released his very, very underappreciated solo album, Outrider, which came out in 1988, and I
Mm.
absolutely love that record.
I feel
Uh,
like you've talked about that at least in one, maybe it was a Led Zeppelin
it's a great, great
episode.
record. And he only released one solo record. That was it. Everything else he's released a little bit more with Plant and some other people, but
Yeah.
Outrider is just it's a very, very good record. And this album is still ugh. I mean, if you take the sum of its parts, it ends up being an okay record to me because
Mm.
there are some strengths. There's a lot more weaknesses,
Yeah.
but it is a reminder that he's coming out of this haze, self-imposed haze that and he was going to be okay, and we were still going to have him
Yeah.
around and still making music.
And I think that's the best thing that we can say about this album is that it served its purpose in getting him out of that funk and kind of elevating the other three musicians as well to something, a future career basically. I mean, in the wow, in the case of Tony Franklin,
Yeah,
actually starting his career.
correct.
In the case of Chris Slade and Paul Rogers, this was a stepping stone for them to go on to do even more. That I think was probably important for them at the time that they were at. But for Jimmy Page, like you said, it was pulling him out of that slump. It was
Yeah,
telling him like, hey, you can keep doing this, and even if it's not great, you still did it, and you can keep getting better and better and better again. So
agreed. So yeah, that's
for
The
that,
Firm by The
I
Firm.
appreciate this album. Yeah,
Me
for that I
too.
appreciate this album. But
But that's The Firm by The Firm.
mm,
You need to let us know what you think. Except don't you dare email me and say, I love this record. Because you don't. You might like it. Like is fine, but don't